Hello everyone, and welcome back to our series of videos about the Sponsorship Success Academy. Just like old times on the podcast, I am here with Toby Trice. How are you doing today, Toby?
As always, yes, I'm awesome. I'm so good.
Good.
Nothing changes here, always smiling, except this time I can actually see you. It's quite nice.
I know.
Usually we podcast on just audio, so it's nice to say hi properly.
Yeah, it's good. Maybe we should start doing video podcasts, but then that kind of is a barrier for me because it means I would have to, get dressed and put on makeup, which I don't normally do. I'm normally in my pajamas.
Yeah, kind of 8 a.m. starts might not quite go to plan.
Yeah, exactly. So we are here together today to talk through, I think, one of the coolest parts of the course. I'm really, really excited about this. So I have been working really, really hard in the background to create the sponsorship blueprint, which is basically going to be the learning plan for anyone who's on the course. And I asked you, Toby, to kind of go through it based on the different stages in your career so far, just to show anyone who's going to be joining us on the course or anyone who's just interested in seeing some snazzy graphs. I want them to see like what a snapshot of an entire career looks like. Even though it's a short career so far, there's still so much more to go and so many more improvements to be made. But I think your snapshot is actually really impressive. So I want to kind of showcase it as an example of where you started, how your skills in sponsorship have evolved, and kind of where you're at now.
Yeah, it's kind of mad thinking back right from the very beginning. I mean, I remember seeing you at Autosport and just how I was nervous. I was really nervous about this whole thing. So, I had no knowledge. I was scared, nervous, anxious, whatever, all those kind of things. And yeah, it's quite amazing to see actually just in the short space of time how much I've progressed. And on reflection, it's quite exciting. So I'm looking forward to going through this with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyone who is filling out the sponsorship blueprint for themselves as part of the course will fill out part 1, and they'll fill out part 2 halfway through the course, and then part 3 at the end of the course to see their progression. But obviously with you, Toby, we did it from when you started karting to just after you'd read Get Paid to Race and then met me at Autosport, and then your final blueprint comes from you now as this very well-rounded racing driver, having been through 6 weeks of success, really kind of like honed your style and your niche, and then also doing things like the podcast and us chatting every so often as well. I think it's a really good showcase of how you can grow from where you were when you were karting.
Absolutely, yeah. And the way I kind of look at it is like, if I can do that, anyone can. I genuinely believe it with the right tools and the right knowledge behind you, the right support, Jess, that you've given me. That's where I'm at. So brilliant. I'm thrilled. I'm chuffed to bits. It's awesome.
Yeah. So when we went through your blueprint, how did you kind of feel as we were kind of talking through those scores and seeing how you've progressed?
Do you know what is really interesting? Because kind of casting my mind back right to karting days and like prior to meeting you and stuff, racing was always my ambition. When I was karting, I realized I was okay at karting, but I just had no idea with the whole commercial side. And so many people have that same kind of block of like, oh, I'd love to, but I haven't got the money. But I'm one of these people that believes that wherever there's a will, there's a way. And I believed in everything you've taught me. And to see the kind of like phases of progression throughout until where we're at now is really quite fascinating. But what I've really enjoyed about doing this blueprint really is that it's lovely to see where I've grown to and how far I've come. And spending that time in reflection is really quite beneficial for me right now, because I'm now looking at the next step for next year and how I can and further improve myself. But there's always room for development, and as drivers we know that there's always a bit more to find. And certainly the blueprint, the last kind of ring that we did, really shows actually the key areas that I want to work on, and I've been working on them sort of ever since we've done that really. So yeah, it's fascinating. I just kind of want to keep like that flourishing and keep that kind of growing out, and that gives me like quite a nice visual representation of where I'm at really. And thank you. Yeah. Great.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, right, let's jump into it. I'm really excited.
Yeah, let's go.
And I know everyone's like, just show us the damn thing. Okay, so here is Toby's sponsorship blueprints. For everyone who isn't sure what they're seeing, this middle ring is Toby back in 2017 when you started karting.
Yeah, 2017. Yeah.
So that's kind of how Toby ranked himself in all of these areas that you see around the edge here for where he was back then. Then this middle dashed ring is how Toby felt he'd progressed after reading Get Paid to Race. So lots of progression there alone. And then the final colourful ring that matches all of these sections is where Toby is now, which I think just looking at that is amazing.
Yeah, it's really quite mad. And to be fair, like the first one, I was probably a bit generous. I think there's some that's probably even smaller than that. It should have been more shrunk into the middle.
Yeah.
But where I'm at now, I genuinely believe in what I'm doing, and believe that I've got that capability that warrants those scores. And it's it's down to your support, Jess. Like seriously,
Good.
it's crazy. Look at me back then to now. It's nuts.
I know, it's amazing. And you know, one of the distinct differences here with how academy students will be filling out their blueprint is they'll be filling it out for them at that moment. So it's going to be easier than, you know, I kind of threw you in the deep end, Toby, saying, think back all those years and you know, tell me how you felt. So I think it will be easier for everyone else. But so I just think this is really interesting. So again, the baseline is that time karting. Previous would be just after you'd read Get Paid to Race, and latest is now. So your score out of obviously 100.
Yeah, and it shows in my results, right? I mean,
It does,
you know,
yeah.
this is proof that actually that score there really does show what my success has like been on track. Of course, I've like really established myself as a racing driver this year, and we're doing really well on the track. But off track, that score is where it really reflects the most, because my sponsors are happy. We've got great returns. We've got really exciting conversations for the future. And that is because of that score. You know, I wouldn't feel confident in having those discussions and moving my sponsorship kind of package, if you like, moving forward, as confident as I am without all that there. So there's room for improvement, of course, but so happy to see this. This is awesome.
Yeah. So I guess a lot of people ask you, how do you get sponsors? How do you consistently kind of do what you're doing? And I think this is a good visual representation of that.
Yeah.
Because it's through nailing all of these different areas that kind of make up sponsorship success, which is what we're teaching in the course. I think because you're nailing them and because you're consistently improving on each of them as well, they all kind of come together into this, you know, package of Toby Tries Racing that people kind of want to work with.
Yeah.
And, you know, everyone will know this, that sponsorship is still far from easy. There's still a lot of hard work involved. But I think it's just nice to see those areas that kind of make up that full package now.
Yeah, and this is quite nice because like looking at where I am now towards next season, I'm now at the kind of phase again of that big daunting task of that really big level up to next year. And every year I've gone through this, you know, from karting into my first race season, obviously into this season, they've all been big hops and big jumps. So it's actually really nice to see kind of like where I'm at, and certain things that I know that I'm really got nailed has allowed me to get success. And there's a few things here I can work on that if I did work on it, I'm sure things will naturally flow good in my direction, because it has to this point. It's worked. So yeah, nice. One of the big things that we really, really want students to see from this is how much they've grown over the 3 months of the course, because I think sometimes it's so easy to get in your own head and think, oh, I'm not making any progress, I'm not getting anywhere. True.
But actually, you know, imposter syndrome is kind of thrown out the door when you can see just how much you've improved in something.
Yeah.
And I think that's really valuable.
Yeah, completely.
So are you happy to go through your specific scores and kind of like why you gave them, etc.?
Yeah, feel free. Yeah, far away.
Cool. Okay, let's scroll over here. So as you can see, we've got the rough dates in here of you know what times we're referring to in the Toby Tries Racing career. So let's talk through the areas of branding first. So we've got niche, storytelling, and audience. Tell me kind of like what you were thinking about each of these as we were filling this in and you were kind of giving those scores.
Yeah, I mean, like I go back to the karting days, kind of niche. I didn't really know that was a thing for racing. I just thought you had to be good on track to get track sponsors. So that's why I scored it really low. Storytelling audience, I kind of realized at an early point that like I was able to connect with people and talk about my successes on track and how I kind of progressed and how I've learned quickly. So I kind of had an idea about that, but you know, compared to where I'm at now, it really didn't cut the mustard. Obviously after reading your book, I understood a little bit more about kind of niche and why it's important. So that was quite an explorative moment for me actually to sort of start thinking about, how can I separate myself as a racing driver? But I wasn't really clear of how to. I just knew that I needed to. And then after the 6 weeks to success course, that's when I guess my niche was nailed. And I think throughout the whole process, it's been very much kind of bouncing ideas off of you, the group, and sort of spending some time on it, which has allowed me to really establish my brand and how to tell my story and capture my audience. So I feel like it's really fair to say that actually those scores at the end there are bang on. Like, yeah, and actually looking at this, it's just quite mad thinking that back then, little did I know that this would all turn out into evolve in such a story that I've got journalists constantly messaging me now wanting to gain press exposure and actually get coverage in national newspapers and magazines and stuff. And like, when I was in karting, I think the best I got was probably someone shared a post on Facebook. Like, it's crazy.
And I definitely think that your brand, so niche, storytelling, audience, all of that has kind of, you build that in such a way that it does attract this attention, with sponsors coming to you, with the press, etc. I think that's really, really powerful and something that a lot of drivers miss. They're really, really focused on how can I pitch? How can I find businesses? When actually, if you can grow your brand in such a way that people start to pay attention, that's just as powerful.
Yeah, because it adds credibility, right? Like, so the conversation I'm having now with current sponsors, and one of the reasons why one sponsor actually signed this year with me was because he was fully aware of what my niche was, my brand, and it was a credible source that there was very little negotiations or the kind of pitching to actually get them on board as a sponsor. They just said they needed to be involved, and it was very much just a case of filling out the details between the two of us. And now we're having a very successful time of this year. So for me, brand is the long game and probably the most important thing, because you can attract amazing success with it. And you always said this to me, and I remember at the start, I think when I was kind of exploring my niche, like, this is after kind of reading the book and when I first met you. I had like a little bit of disbelief. Really? Like, are you sure? And he was like, honestly, stick with it and keep exploring where you're at. And the proof's in the pudding. That's what I can say.
There's a real kind of sense of trust the process with this.
100%.
Because you're right, totally the long game. And I think a lot of people miss that because they want quick wins. And I'm happy to teach quick wins, absolutely. Sure. But when you're talking about like a long running racing career, with the kind of attention that you need to get those big partnerships, brand is absolutely the way forward.
Massive. Yeah, it's huge.
So let's talk about value. I think your scores are kind of even more interesting here in terms of like how low they were during those karting days. Can you kind of talk us through that and what your perception of value was back then?
Yeah, so drivers that I saw go from karting into cars and people that I knew, I had brief discussions with them about sponsorship, and it was very much, chuck a sticker on a car, get your sponsor to pay some money to you. You're advertising their business, and around you go in circles, and that's it. And I was like, really? Is this how this world works? I wasn't quite sure. And of course, as a motorsport fan forever, all I've seen throughout the years is seeing iconic race cars with different companies on the side of. So I just assume, okay, well, that maybe that is it. Maybe that's what you need to do. Of course, I picked up your book and I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much we can do. Like, I had no idea there's all these things you can do in motorsport, and I had to educate myself of even what a paddock's like, because I've only ever been the fan side of the fence prior to getting into motorsport. So your book was really insightful to know, like, okay, there's lots of things we can offer. But then, after the 6 weeks course and this constant development that I've kind of refined, and I think very much I've refined this over the last sort of 6 months or to a year or so that you and I have been working together, that I feel like my offering really is like up there. I genuinely believe that what I offer to sponsors is a top level service, and I genuinely believe that I can deliver really good value back to companies that invest in Team Trice and Team TTR, which is my little brand of Bobble Hat Army and whatnot. So
Yeah.
it really ties in, the whole value thing that really ties in with brand, and the two really come together quite nicely. But this for sure is probably the biggest jump I've had from, sticker on a car kind of thing to where I'm at, where
Yeah.
I can educate sponsors actually just how beneficial it can be. Because how many sponsors out there, let's face it, just assume the same, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I just love that your offering area went from a 1 to a 10. That's just brilliant.
Like I believe that's the right score for that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, 100%.
So let's look at sponsors. So this is where we're very much talking about the research and the finding of sponsors, and also building those initial relationships. I think because you're quite personable, that's why these sections are quite high compared to other sections for your karting days. But it's interesting to see that there's still 10s and 9s now. So kind of, talk us through this and kind of your journey of that research and relationship building that you do with sponsors.
Yeah, so I think if I go back to the McCartan days, I love meeting people. I love talking to people. I love understanding what they do for a living. I love chatting about kind of challenges that I've faced, and I just get a lot of buzz from that. I'm a bit of a people pleaser naturally, and that's just not my natural personality. So kind of building relationships, searching, for potential new sponsors. At the beginning, actually, I thought I was okay with it. And to be fair, I think I probably should have given it a higher score than perhaps it deserved in this particular question. But certainly because now I kind of can understand exactly how to benefit a sponsor, and I understand who to network with in terms of who are the decision makers, and also people that are within my niche. I just feel that it's actually easier then for me to network and build relationships up, because I'm coming from the same source of people and interests and etc. that they've got. So for example, my niche within the fertility sector, and obviously the awareness campaigns that I'm doing, it's really easy for me now to build those relationships up, search for the right people, and understand what the goals are, because we are in the same niche. That's far easier than, let's say, I don't know, a scaffolding company. I've got no clue about scaffolding. I don't build houses. For me, it's the most opposite end of the spectrum. So by kind of understanding more about sponsors, thanks to all the kind of stuff that you've helped me sort of work through and how to search for people. Again, this comes back to brand at the top and finding your niche. It really always comes back to that. It's easy now. Like, I've got a lovely network of people, and I'm sure I've got people that aren't currently sponsors that maybe next year or the year after, or maybe in the future, that they will be sponsors, and when the time's right. So keep building that network.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's talk pitch.
The scariest
bit.
I
think, definitely the scariest bit. And for this course, we brought on a bunch of sponsors, and even now, like, the pitch is still that, like, most nerve-wracking bit, even for me. But I think it's definitely one of those things that you learn, but it's also one of the trickiest, because it's so nuanced. Every business is different, kind of thing. So talk me through the scores that you've given for each of these sections: the pitch, the proposal, and making the sale.
Well, I think the first phase is pretty self-explanatory. I had no idea how to go to a sponsor. If I could have given it a 0, I would have done Jess. I had no idea. I genuinely had no idea what to even say, how to get a sponsor. Like, the pitch for me was, non-existent. Excuse the dog licking.
I can hear the dog.
He's having a drink. I'll just pause a second. You can cut this, right?
Yeah.
Come on, gents.
Right, give me a chance to have a drink as well.
That's a thirsty dog right there.
Yeah.
Jensen, come lay down. Come lay down. Good boy. Sit down. Good boy. Yeah. So the second phase for the pitch was, from the book, there was actually a lot of information in there that kind of helped me understand, how to pitch, how to structure it. I think was the biggest thing I took from that, and obviously then how to create a kind of proposal that was kind of beneficial to the sponsor and actually really targeted to what their interest would be. Based on their goals, and this, reverting back to the understanding your sponsors' goals, etc. And now, you know, I think 8, 8, and 9 is probably quite a fair score. It's something that I think would be very hard to push myself up to 9 and 10s, because it's, for me, it's very much a continual refinement. And the better that I can build relationships, the pitch becomes easier, which is why I gave that score, and that comes down to, you know, obviously what I've learned through the course. But yeah, the pitch is the scariest bit. And I think every driver will completely agree with me. You know, when they get to the point where they're pitching, gosh, it's scary, because you've usually by that point identified a sponsor that you really, really want.
Yeah.
And so the decline of that sponsor actually means more than just a generic, like, one that's not within your niche. So yeah, scary, but it's part of the fun. The rewards are high.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, if you're going from a 1 to an 8 or a 1 to a 9 on this, it probably means that you're going to be landing the majority of the pitches and thing that you send out, compared to almost none or none.
Yeah.
So I think you know, anything that's in like the top half of these 3 points in this section is you know, a driver who can secure sponsorship. Because even, you know, a pitch doesn't have to be 100% perfect to be effective.
No.
And again, there's so many kind of nuances and differences in how each different kind of business or person will react to a specific pitch. Some love the hard sell, some like no sell, I want it to be my idea kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's what makes it really tricky. And we'll go on to mindset, which is part of this as well. But I think there's this thing in all of us that says, why would this person want to give me 5 or 6 figures worth of money to go do the thing that I love?
Yeah.
When we're forgetting all of the stuff about value and brand. And, you know, yeah, I think that's the thing that makes pitching so difficult, is that confidence that kind of comes with it.
Yeah, 100%. That brings us nicely down to mindset, right?
It does, yeah.
Because,
let's look at this.
Yeah,
I think this is interesting for you. So talk us through this.
I think my mindset's always been really strong, but I've lacked confidence, and that's because I didn't have the knowledge. When I was much younger, I was a very unconfident person. I'd find it quite actually nervous just talking to a stranger, certainly through my later teens, and throughout my 20s I've grown a lot, and now I can just chat to anyone and love it. It's my life now. I love it. But yeah, kind of that drive that I had from the start, I think was quite fair to score it, you know, nearer to 5. The 4 I think is fair, because I was so determined to make this work. But now I've had a taste of what real success is in motorsport, getting wins and land on the podium, getting lap records, you know, all of the whole weekend, seeing all my sponsors have an amazing weekend, everyone like ear to ear smiles and like covered in champagne, you know, all those kind of things. That really gives me so much drive. And this is really the kind of final part of the jigsaw for me, really, because all of the things that you can do above this point keep helping you drive for more success. So I think this one's more of a natural progression that I've kind of learned throughout the whole process. Because after reading your book, I was like, oh, okay, here we go. This is exciting. I got a bit more consistent. I got a little bit more drive, and I was obviously a bit more confident. But then once I had 2019 out of the way after the course, I was like, I've got to do this. This is awesome, right? And then the drive and the consistency comes, and so my scores are naturally higher. So yeah, I think this is really kind of like the icing on the cake.
Yeah. I'm always really surprised. Like after 6 weeks of success, I always did like a feedback survey, and one of the questions was, what's the biggest thing that you got out of this course?
Yeah.
And so many people, even those who had like 5 and 6 figures in 6 weeks, so many people said confidence.
Yeah.
And I think that's amazing, because it's one of those things that you can carry with you for your entire career.
Yeah.
And I've kind of built the Sponsorship Success Academy on the foundation of that, because I knew how important it was to give drivers kind of like the tools and confidence to just go into the rest of their career, rather than just being like, hey, go off and get, you know, some quick wins now, but then be stuck again next year. So it was really important to me to kind of include all of this mindset stuff, because I think it's a missing piece of the puzzle when so many people are talking about how to pitch for sponsorship.
Yeah, because it's kind of like it kind of works in twofold because where you're confident based on the success from previous sponsors. So if you've worked with a sponsor for a year and at the end of the year you've got them a return on whatever their goal was, however that might look, and they are really happy, they want to work with you again the next year, and they're really excited about what's next. That builds your confidence in the fact that when you pitch to new sponsors, you believe in what you're offering works, because obviously you've got your own testimonial, you've got your own case that actually is a big tick. But then combine that with the knowledge that you grow, and the way you can then refine it for other sponsors only gives you more confidence, but that reflects back onto a sponsor. And then it kind of ripples back to all the other things that we've discussed and how that all helps out, because then when you go to pitch, your sponsors can see that you're confident, and that alone can help you win a pitch. If you go there and say, yeah, I think we might be able to help you, like straight away the sponsor's going to get the vibe that actually, is this person really know what they're doing? Whereas you can go, do you know what, I've been working with the sponsor this year that's similar to you, we've done X, Y, and Z, this is the results we've got, it's been so exciting. Straight away they're going to see that, they're like, oh my god, that's so cool, how do we get involved? And it might not mean that they become a big sponsor that you might want them to be, but at least they can test the water based on your confidence and actually spend a year working with them, and who knows where that might end up in the future. So
absolutely. And I think even if you don't have that social proof of having worked with a sponsor, I think just being able to kind of go and say, I know that I can offer you value is more than enough.
Yeah, and that was me at 19, wasn't it? Like, do you remember the I mean, we spoke about this in the podcast, but let's share it now. Is that very first phone call I rung you after my very first live pitch to one of my sponsors in 2019, and I remember getting the phone going, oh my god, yes, we've done it, we've secured the deal, it's amazing, and it felt incredible. But obviously that was my first big sponsor I signed, and I hadn't even got my race license. Like I had nothing. I didn't even have a helmet. I had nothing. I literally was like, I didn't even have a car. Like it was crazy, and it made it work.
Amazing. So I think that's all we've kind of got to discuss today. Thank you so much for kind of going through this with us, Toby, and kind of, sharing your thoughts and everything. It's been a really kind of nice insight into your growth, but also how others can kind of get the most from the sponsorship blueprint.
Exciting. Yeah. Good luck, everyone.
Thanks very much. I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you.